Today, we're going to do some experiments on solids, liquids and gases and what happens to them when we add or take away heat. I want you to have a look at the substances we have in front of us. Can you tell me what they are?
Ice, water and steam.
Fantastic. So we have ice with our ice cubes, water in our cup and steam from this hot water. So, let's have a look at them. Ice, water, steam. Can you identify their states?
Solid, liquid and gas.
Fantastic, right again. So there we have our solid state, our liquid state and our gas state. Okay? Are they all the same substance?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because they're all made of water.
That's right. So they're all still made up of the same chemical substance that we know as H2O, or water. So, in each of these, there is particles. So when we talk about particles, all substances have particles. Particles are little tiny things that we can't see with our eyes, but we can see under a microscope. Particles in solids, liquids and gases all behave very differently. So depending on how much energy we give them by adding or removing heat, will depend on how quickly they move and vibrate. You understand so far?
Yes.
Fantastic. So let's have a look at our solid. What can you tell me about our solid?
It has a solid form and we're able to pick it up.
That's right. So this is our solid form. With our solid form, the particles are very close together, as we said before, because all things are made up of little particles. In a solid, they're very close together and they're moving and vibrating very slightly. They don't move and vibrate very much, and that's why they're able to retain the solid shape. So in this case, it's our ice cube. So what do you think about adding energy? How can we do that?
We could either blow on it to add the energy, or we could create friction in our hands to add more energy to it.
Very close. That's how we can add heat to it. But we need to first give the particles energy by heating it up. Okay, do you understand?
Yes.
So, we give particles energy by adding or removing heat. Now, as you said a moment ago, we can add or remove heat by blowing on them or using friction or things like that. So I want you to test your hypothesis. Can you add some heat to that ice and tell me what's happening to it?
Well, it's melting in my hands. It becomes smaller and
That's right, it
into our
becomes
liquid.
smaller and turns into our liquid. As you can see on the bench, we're starting to have our little puddle of water from our ice. As our ice turns into our water. And water, the particles in water, are a bit further apart. So we talked about particles vibrating and moving very closely together in our solid. In our liquid, they move further and further apart as we add heat. Because we're adding that energy, those particles vibrate more quickly and they become faster and faster and they move apart. And so they're able to take different shapes. So in our solid, they're so close, they stay the same. But in our water, it takes up the shape of the container it's in. So as you can see, it's taking up the shape of this glass. If I pour it into this glass, what happens to it?
it takes the shape of the new glass.
That's right. And what about in this one?
It takes the shape of that container.
Exactly. So no matter what we put it into, water is going to stay the same shape as the container that it's in. So we've talked about ice being our solid and how the particles behave. We talked about water and how the particles behave in water. So let's add even more heat to it. What do you think is going to happen when we add more heat?
It'll create the steam.
Exactly. So let's put some of our water into our kettle. Mind you, we're going to be very careful. We're going to turn it on and add more heat to the water. As we see, as it boils, we're getting, again, more energy into the particles. And the particles are moving further and further and further apart. And they're getting more energy, they're vibrating more quickly, and they're moving around, which is how we then get the steam. Are we understanding?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's have a look. Our kettle's nearly boiled. Can you see the steam?
Yeah.
So that's all those water particles turning into a gas. Is it still the same as our solid and our liquid?
Yes, because it's still water.
That's right. It's still the same chemical substance. Have we changed the substance?
No.
No. We've just changed the properties of the substance. So, what we've talked about so far is changing ice to water and water to steam. And how do we do that again?
By adding heat.
That's right, we add more heat. So let's have a quick revision of everything we've just learnt. Water, ice and steam. Are they all the same thing?
Yes.
Yes, they definitely are because they're still all H2O. What happens when we add steam? Sorry, what happens when we add heat?
Particles in the, say, ice would distance themselves because they have more energy and thus creating water. And then if we add more heat to the water, it'll make the particles separate even more and create steam.
Very good. So as we're adding more heat, our particles vibrate faster and faster and faster. They move further apart, and so they have more energy and can move more freely. What do you think would happen? Because we've added heat in each of these. What's going to happen if I cool it down?
If you cooled the steam, it would turn into water, and then if you cooled the water, it would turn into ice.
That's right. So we just reverse the process. How might I turn my steam into water?
No idea.
We can turn our steam into water through a process called evaporation and condensation. So evaporation is the heating, so the water evaporates into the air, and condensation is if I put a glass over it, all that steam would condense on the inside and start to form water. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So that's how we get water from steam. And from there, we put it into trays and we put it into a freezer and cool it down even further, which then changes it back into our solid state. You with me?
Yep.
Fantastic. So we talked about it all being the same substance. We've talked about what happens when we add heat. We've talked about what happens when we take away heat. Do you understand now that ice, water and steam are all the same thing?
Yes.
Fantastic. So, as we can say in conclusion, ice, water and steam are the same.
Yes.
They are all in different states. We're just changing the properties, not the substance.
Yeah.
And the properties change because?
Because of the particles inside of them, because of the heat.
Fantastic. Great job.